Let's start off with sort of a 30,000 foot view of the Elastic Stack and the components within it and how they fit together. So Elasticsearch is just one piece of this system. It started off as basically a scalable version of the Lucene open source search framework, and it just added the ability to horizontally scale Lucene indices. So we'll talk about shards of Elasticsearch, and each shard in Elasticsearch is just a single Lucene inverted index of documents. So every shard is an actual Lucene instance of its own. However, Elasticsearch has evolved to be much more than just Lucene spread out across a cluster. It can be used for much more than full text search now, and it can actually handle structured data and aggregate data very quickly. So it's not just for search, it can handle structured data of any type. And you'll see it's often used for things like aggregating logs and things like that. And what's really cool is that it's often a much faster solution than things like Hadoop or Spark or Flink. They're actually building in new things into the Elasticsearch all the time with things like graph visualization and machine learning that actually make Elasticsearch a competitor for things like Hadoop and Spark and Flink, only it can give you an answer in milliseconds instead of in hours. So for the right sorts of use cases, Elasticsearch can be a very powerful tool and not just for search. So let's zoom in and see what Elasticsearch is really about. At a low level, it's really just about handling JSON requests. So we're not talking about pretty UIs or graphical interfaces when we're just talking about Elasticsearch itself. We're talking about a server that can process JSON requests and give you back JSON data. And it's up to you to actually do something useful with that. So for example, we're using curl here to actually issue a REST request with a get verb for a given index called tags, and we're just searching everything that's in it, and you can see how the results come back in JSON format here, and it's up to you to parse all this. So for example, we did get one result here called for the movie Swimming to Cambodia, which has a given user ID and a tag of Cambodia. So if this is part of a tags index that we're searching, this is what a result might actually look like. So just to make it real, that's a sort of output you can expect from Elasticsearch itself. But there's more to it than just Elasticsearch. There's also Kibana, which sits on top of Elasticsearch, and that's what gives you a pretty web UI. So if you're not building your own application on top of Elasticsearch or your own web application, Kibana can be used just for searching and visualizing what's in your search index graphically. And it can do very complex aggregations of data, it can graph your data, it can create charts, and it's often used to do things like log analysis. So if you're familiar with things like Google Analytics, the combination of Elasticsearch and Kibana can be used as sort of a way to roll your own Google Analytics at a very large scale. Let's zoom in and take a look at what it might look like. So here's an actual screenshot from Kibana looking at some real log data, and you can see there's multiple dashboards you can actually look at that are built into Kibana, and this lets you visualize things like where are the hits on my website coming from, and what are the error response codes, and how are they all broken down, and what's my distribution of URLs, whatever you can dream up. So there are a lot of specialized dashboards for certain kinds of data, and it kind of brings home the point that Elasticsearch is not just for searching text anymore. You can actually use it for aggregating things like Apache Access Logs, which is what this view in Kibana does. But you can also use Kibana for pretty much anything else you want too. Later on in this course, we'll use it to visualize the complete works of William Shakespeare, for example, and you can see how it can also be used for text data as well. It's a very flexible tool and a very powerful UI. We can also have something called Logstash and the Beats framework, and these are ways of actually publishing data into Elasticsearch in real time in a streaming format. So if you have, for example, a collection of web server logs coming in that you just want to feed into your search index over time automatically, FileBeat can just sit on your web servers and look for new log files and parse them out, structure them in the way that Elasticsearch wants, and then feed them into your Elasticsearch cluster as they come in. Logstash does much the same thing. It can also be used to push data around between your servers and Elasticsearch, but often it's used as sort of an intermediate step. So you have a very lightweight FileBeat client that would sit on your web servers. Logstash would accept those and sort of collect them and pull them up for feeding into Elasticsearch over time. But it's not just made for log files, and it's not just made for Elasticsearch and web servers either. These are all very general purpose systems that allow you to tie different systems together and publish data to wherever it needs to go, which might be Elasticsearch, might be something else, but it's all part of the Elastic Stack still. But it can also collect data from things like Amazon S3 or Kafka or pretty much anything else you can imagine, databases, and we'll look at all of those examples later in this course. Finally, another piece of the Elastic Stack is called XPack. This is actually a paid add-on offered by Elastic.co, and it offers things like security and alerting and monitoring and reporting features like that. It also contains some of the more advanced features that are just starting to make it into Elasticsearch now, such as machine learning and graph exploration. So you can see that with XPack, Elasticsearch starts to become a real competitor for much more complex and heavyweight systems like Flink and Spark. but that's another piece of the Elastic Stack when we talk about this larger ecosystem. And you can see here that there are free parts of XPack, like the monitoring framework, that let you quickly visualize what's going on with your cluster. What's my CPU utilization, system load, how much memory do I have available, things like that. So when things start to go wrong with your cluster, this is a very useful tool to have for understanding the health of your cluster. So that's it at a high level, the Elastic Stack. Obviously Elasticsearch can still be used for powering search on a website, like Wikipedia or something, but with these components, it can be used for so much more. It's actually a larger framework for publishing data from any source you can imagine and visualizing it as well through things like Kibana. And it also has operational capabilities through XPack. So that is the Elastic Stack at a high level. Let's dive in more into Elasticsearch itself and learn more about how it works.